Absolutely. Good evening, everyone. It is Wednesday, I believe. Yes, it's Wednesday. I am so excited coming off of yesterday. Professor JR, if I can do a little spin or a little twist to the lecture today, just wanting to make sure I give the group some thought process around being an entrepreneur. And if they decide to do that as part of their presentation, um, giving them something to think about. But also, if you're going to do guided research, I was thinking about that, and maybe I can help you guys, move the engine a little bit on that. So, how is everyone doing? If you can come off and just let me know everybody's doing good. Awesome. Did you guys have school today? Awesome. Awesome. Did everybody go to school today? Good, good. What's your favorite subject? Somebody want to chime in, like, or put in the chat? What's your favorite subject in school? History. Okay. Anyone else? Math. Okay. Chemistry. Science. Anyone else? Economics. I love it. I love it. We're going to talk. Let me put up the presentation. We're going to talk a little bit about all of them. Mine was math growing up. In high school, my professor, Miss Giordano. She was my high school math or business math teacher, and my entire career trajectory has been around math, in one way or another, from early career all the way up to where it is now. And I will give you guys a little insight into when you think about being an entrepreneur, doing something that you love, and how you can grow that into a business. And if you're not sure coming out of today's conversation, how you can do some research on it to make sure that you are looking at it from a lens, um, and starting your career path, whether it's going straight out of school um, into becoming an entrepreneur, taking up a trade, or going off to university. Um, there's a wide range on it. So I'm looking forward to having this conversation with you all. So tonight we're going to be talking about applications of entrepreneurship, um, the feeling, I know being high school, coming into this program. It's commendable after school. It's 2 hours of your time in the evening on a Wednesday. It is a lot to say about your commitment to you as a person, you as an individual. So I am so proud of each and every one of you who have taken time out to embark on this journey and to hear what the S.O.A.R program has to say, listen to myself, Professor JR, and look at doing something more self-centered for yourself and your long-term goals. So totally proud of each and every one of you. We talked about the goals. We talked about looking at some iconic um, players in this with regards to what they've done. I like to say, look at people as being no different than you and I, and what your career path will look like at the end of the day. We embrace and we learn. I'm not just here to talk today. I can be very long-winded, and I like the dialogue. I appreciated the dialogue that we had yesterday. I appreciate the questions that we had yesterday. And I would like to say that, use me as your personal coach today. Use me as your personal consultant today. Anything that you may think of, anything that you may want to know about, use me for it today to ask your questions in order to complete this program. I am open. If I know it I'll explain it to you. I'm very granular with the detail, and I like to make sure people understand as we move along. So don't let me just be the one talking. Please get your questions asked and answered along the way. So welcome to the emotional inventory. So we're going to start live interacting right now, and understanding that being an entrepreneur is a roller coaster. The stats would say 90% of all startups fail, but 100% of but 100% of founders who quit also fail. And what does that mean? I'm going to give it to you straight. Um, Doing something you love, having passion behind it, and understanding the true role of why one chooses to become an entrepreneur. And want you all to think about what does that mean when it said, I want to be an entrepreneur. Does anybody like, does when that question pops up, like, what do you think when I say, Caroline, Rima, Kimberly, Jaylene, like being an entrepreneur, what does that mean to you? And I only called them out because those are the four that show up on my screen first. So what does that mean to each of you when you signed up for this program? Hopefully it was no pressure from your parents to sign up for this program. It was something that you wanted to do. Like being an entrepreneur, what does that mean?
To me, it's like expressing yourself on like a service or a good that you want to do. Also being your own manager, being your own boss is kind of good.
Okay. Anyone else?
Like launching a business or like something you're passionate about and your interest.
Okay. Anyone else? So when we think about passion, when we think about the why, when we think about building something and why 90% of startups fail, that's a staggering number for, the people in the room when they say 90% of startups fail. And the question would be, well, why would I want to do this? And I would ask each of you, if that popped up as it popped up for me, if 90% of the startups fail, why? Why would I want to do this? Why do you think most people start businesses? Why do you guys think most people start businesses? Oh, let me change that question. What do you think is the number one reason people start businesses?
Because maybe like something that was invented already or a system that's in place already isn't really like working and they see a gap in it and they want to change that.
Yep, that's a big reason. What is another reason people start businesses?
They
Like
want
help the
money.
oh,
They want money, right? Evan, right. They want money. Why else do you think people start businesses?
to help the public, like there could be something that there's not in the community and they can like do it so that people can have easy access to it.
Right, exactly. Those are three profound reasons. Most of the time, you hear people say, I started this business because I wanted to make money. But then when you ask the question why, when we talk about the seven levels of deepness, right? I'm just going to move the levels of deep, the purpose framework. When you're thinking about this, when you're writing out your business plan and asking yourself, why do I want to do this? Is there a community need? Am I solving for something? Is it about money? Is it that I don't want to go work a 9 to 5 job? I've seen my parents do that. They're never home. I want freedom. I want independence. Why? And you keep asking yourself when they think about the levels deep, the purpose framework. And when you start peeling back, as I call it, the onion, right? The blooming onion in Outback. When you start peeling that onion back and asking yourself why 7 times, why do I want to do this? Because I want money, but why? Because I want to help people, but why? Because I'm good at XYZ, but why? I can provide a service. Once you can write down that question 7 times and get to the sub of why you want to do this, that's when you become part of that 10% that is successful in business and not part of the 90% that is doing something that ends up being more of a hobby than more of a CEO mindset that we spoke about yesterday and being in it for the long game. Um, so I wanted to make sure that we started out with that as part of the conversation, right? I wanted to make sure that we start the conversation differently because what I would like to do as part of this class is really go deep into an entrepreneurship. And I had an opportunity to think about it, and I'm really excited because I want to stay with the clothing example that we talked about yesterday. And if you recall, we talked about all the things it would take to create a clothing t-shirt business yesterday. And I wanted to expand on that. I wanted to have a dialogue that says if you start here, you don't have to stay here. If you start here, you can branch this off to something much bigger, much broader at the end of the day. And if you're not sure by the time we finish this conversation this evening, on whether you want to go and become an entrepreneur. And I gotta say for you all that there is no age limit on when you become an entrepreneur. Like you can sign off of this class tonight at 8:30 and by 9 o'clock you can be your own entrepreneur. You can be in business. It doesn't take much to start. It's the commitment, it's the longevity of it. And if you're not sure today, that guided research that is part of the program and an option for you also. We're going to talk about what that looks like and how do you start thinking of it from, I'm not quite sure, but I know what I want to do. I have a passion to do this. Let me start the research. Let me understand foundationally what it looks like, and then I could move forward with creating a business. Does that make sense to everyone? But anybody have any questions? Anybody want to throw anything out there for me to make sure I cover off on it as we're talking? No? Okay. Workshop from purpose to mission. Take your level 7 answer and use it to refine the mission statement you wrote. Did each of you write a mission statement? Have you started on that? No? Okay. So when you're writing your mission statement, right? Whether you use AI, we talked about it yesterday, or whether you write it out, my mission. I want to create something that the world needs. I want to provide a service that addresses um, the arts in school. I want to help K through 8 kids become high performing mathematicians one day. And what is the mission and then the value, the vision in that. And really working on it in defining what your mission is. Keeping in the forefront what you love, what the world needs, providing that service, and what you can get paid for. Like, what is the value? What is your value for bringing this forward? One of the things I always tell people that if you lead with, I want to make money, it doesn't sustain itself. When you lead with your passion versus chasing the money and doing something that you love, the money will follow and you will enjoy what you do. The strategic checklist, strategic planning, the process of defining a direction and making decisions on allocating resources to pursue this strategy. Is your vision inspiring? Is your BMC realistic? Does your VPC actually solve a customer's trying to pain? And that's important. Understanding, again, reiterating your mission statement. Is your business purpose written professionally? What are you providing? What is the good in service? And looking at your vision for your company, the long strategy of it, making sure that your vision ties into your mission. Your vision should always ask, where are you going? And your mission is, why do you exist? So if you can answer those two questions inside of your vision and mission, and I'll repeat it again. Your vision should be, where are you going? And your mission should read and answer the question, why do you exist? When we think about Remalicious from yesterday, where are you going? And when you think about your mission, why do you exist? When we think about a clothing company, where are we going? Nike didn't just start as this big conglomerate that has athletic wear, that has footwear, that has all of this. It probably started out as a t-shirt business, and then it's grown into this big conglomerate that we know today as Nike. So being able to always keep your mission and vision in focus and tweaking it, as we talked about yesterday, as your business model changes, is where you should reside. When we talk about, is your BMC realistic? Have we talked about your BMC, your business model? Have you guys talked about that? No, no, let's not. Okay. Let's talk about the BMC. Let's talk about the business model. Let's talk about, as you're breaking down what you guys, I'm sorry, hold on one second. What your BMC should look like. And the BMC answers one very specific question. How does the business actually work? And I like to break it down from a perspective of who the customer is. Who are you serving? The value proposition. And the value proposition is, and we talked about this yesterday, what problem are you solving for? Right? Your channels, marketing. How do you find your customers? And we're going to talk about all of this. Your customer relations, your customer service, how do you keep them? We talked about this yesterday also, right? With the shoe cleaning business and having a price, and whether we invest the extra $100 into marketing or do we buy a better cleaning solution. And we talked about keeping your base price, but then offering a higher tier with a higher price point, providing customer service, knowing who your market is, knowing who you're targeting. So we think about the business model and breaking it down. We're going into the deeper level of it. And we think about resources, right? We've talked about money, investing, right? Whether it's equipment, whether it's supplies, what are we going to need to run this business? We think about activities. What do you need to do daily? If you are in a brick and mortar store, if you hear somebody talk about brick and mortar is a storefront, right? Rima, if you're doing a bakery, are you going to do it out of your home? Are you going to open up a shop? What activities? I gotta be at the bakery if I have a brick and either way, if I'm at a storefront, I got to be there 4 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning because people want to get a donut and a coffee before they head to work. What are your daily activities? If I'm running a tutoring business like we talked about yesterday, my tutoring is in the afternoon, after school, is it on the weekend? What activities do I need to do to prep for that? If we're thinking snow plowing, all right, I got to watch the weather because people are going to want their, sidewalks, their driveways cleaned out. How do I deploy my staff? How do I tier my shifts? Those are key activities. What must you do daily? If you have staff, hiring people, onboarding people, what happens when someone calls out of work? How do you cover that person? Those are all things as CEOs that we think about. Those are all things when you're thinking about your business model canvas. And I love the word canvas because when I think of canvas, I think of painting, right? I think of creating a masterpiece. And for each of you, Professor Jay, you have your hand raised.
Yes,
Maybe.
yes, yes. Sorry. I wanted to, I guess, just remind everyone. So the business model canvas you guys touched on in last week, Tuesday, that was the chart that had all the rectangles in it. But secondly, I wanted to confirm, is everyone looking at the Google class that's also in your email? All the resources for these are actually in the Google Classroom. So that way you can follow up after class, because I know it's a lot of information. Um, and lastly, I want to say the business model canvas specifically, there are links in the Google Class, like I'll post one of them here, that walk you through step by step how to complete the business model canvas. So that way, like you have that follow-up
Good,
guidance.
good. Roxy, you
Roxy?
have a question?
Sorry, I was just confused about the Google Classroom. Like, how do you want us to follow it? Like, because it's a lot of like different stuff all at once, but I thought that it was gonna be re-updated. I don't know if that makes sense. Like, I didn't know
Oh, like
what.
narrow down. So
Yeah.
basically, the Google Class is a resource. Yes, there's a lot there. But basically, there's some of everything that we touch on there, so that way you can go back on anything that was a little unclear. So you could think of it as a resource. You could go back there and say, okay, here's something that actually walks me through what they touched on in class. We talked about business model canvas. We talked about the value proposition, but here I could like sit and read it and not be rushed. You could take your time, and then use that as a reference when you're putting together your own drafts of your business model canvas.
So back to Professor Jay's question, how many of you guys have looked at the business model canvas, um, or at least are familiar with it? And if not, writing notes from this session, so when you go back into Google Class, it'll help you answer some of those questions. So please ask questions, even if you haven't looked at it yet. And if there's something that I am saying that's unclear, excuse me, just raise your hand and ask a question because I don't want you guys to leave here and not be clear on what I'm talking about. I am moving with the expectation that you guys have looked at it and at least know what the BMC is, even if you've just peeked at it once and checked off on it as part of this program. Is that fair? Okay. So when we're thinking of the business model canvas, like I was saying, I think of canvas as creating my masterpiece, right? Writing it out. And we talked about, your customer. Who are you serving? The value proposition. What problem do you solve for? And the channels. How do you find your customers, your marketing, social media, your revenue streams? We talked about that a little bit yesterday, your price point. How do you get paid? How will you get paid? Um, cash is king. There's a lot of systems out there right now, whether it's Apple Pay, Venmo, Cash App, on how you collect your monies. Um, and we won't dive deeper into it, but each one of those, has a mechanism and a reporting to the IRS as well that, we have to think about as part of your being an entrepreneur. Your partnerships. Will you have partners? Will you have people that help you run your business? Um, and understanding the cost of money. We talked about that a little bit yesterday. So being able to break it down as you're working on your BMC, if you're writing out a business plan, understanding what your BMC is, and making sure that it's tested, that it's tested, that it makes sense, and asking yourself and asking to the lower level, why am I doing this? Why? Keep asking yourself why as you're completing the assignment for your pitch. Why am I doing this? Does it make sense? Does it have a feel good feeling for me, right? Because if I do a quick exercise, if I was to give you $1,000 right now, based on everything I just said, where would you spend it inside of your BMC? Anybody want to have a quick conversation with me on that? If you were given $1,000 right now, where would you spend it inside of your BMC?
I think that if I got $1,000, I would try to focus on advertising so that the money I spend, I kind of get back in new customers.
I like that. I like that. When we think about customers and when we think about obtaining customers, right? I'm going to stay with you, Roxy, for a second. When you think about advertising, what are some of the advertising channels today that are out there?
Like social media, newspapers, flyers.
Which ones do you think, um, let me take a step back. So there's something in the marketing world called looking at your target market and developing a persona. And I don't want to get too far into it, but understanding who your customer would be. So when you think about channels, right? If you think about a demographic of people, age group, right? I'm going to target X and I want you to fill this in. I'm going to target X. Therefore, my advertising channels would look like Y. Can you answer those two questions for me?
Like if you were to target teenagers, your best bet is social media. But if you were targeting like more of the older generation, you would target like newspapers and stuff like that.
Exactly. Did everybody follow that? Thank you. That was perfect. Everybody got that?
Oh yeah, now you have to go through that whole.
And Roxy, you answered that with such precision because one of the things communities do around election time and voting, they look at and understand the demographics of who comes out and votes. And I was in a meeting during the last November election, and they talked about the older population, seniors. Seniors, as we know, aren't big on social media. So you see a lot of print. I'm sure we all got inundated with it during the campaign, a lot of mail, a lot of flyers, a lot of mail, a lot of flyers. So that's another advertising channel because they understood who they were targeting and how they needed to reach them. So, Roxy, thank you for that. And you answered it perfectly. And I want each of you, whether you're doing research on it, whether you are writing out your business plan, to look up the word, who is your persona? What does that person look like? Is it a male between 18 to 24? Is it a female between 23 and 35? Are they a stay-at-home mom? Do they work? Are they a college student, and breaking down what that persona looks like. And then the demographics. Am I targeting Union County? Am I targeting the state of New Jersey? Am I targeting a broader base? And how do you reach them? It depends. It depends on, as Roxy said, it depends on who your demographics are and what channel you will be using. So it was answered perfectly. Thank you so much. So looking at your business model and breaking it down to the lowest point, that if you had this $1,000, advertising is a sure way because you're going to invest that money. And that money should bring, you talking about the acquisition cost that we talked about yesterday. For every $1,000 I spend, it should generate XYZ in customers, which also increases our top line revenue, which also increases our bottom line profit. And that's how we all should be thinking about it. When we think about the value proposition, so again, another template inside of your Google Classroom, does your VPC actually solve a customer's pain? This is the biggest part. And I would tell all of you, do something that you love, do something that you enjoy, and you will have fun while making all the money in the world. And understanding if you can solve a customer's pain point, you win. And doesn't mean you have to have 20 different things, but one good thing and sell it 20 different times is a win also, right? And is it actually solving a problem? And breaking it down and looking at it from a customer perspective. Um, what frustrates them? Every time I go, we're going to talk about clothing. Every time I go to the store, you know, I am petite, the pants are all long. I got to wear 5-inch heels, but I walk to work every day. I got to catch transit, and I'm just frustrated. And how do you solve for that problem, right? I am a mom. I'm raising my kids. My son likes history. I don't have time to teach him. I would love to get him a tutor. How do you solve for that problem, right? What frustrates people? If you can get inside the mind, we are all around people every day. We go to the mall. We go to Jersey Gardens. We go to Menlo. We go to the movies. Like we are out and about on our day-to-day activity, whether it's our friends, it's, our parents. We want to think about solving something, solving a problem for what gives somebody else some pain, and answering the question, what do people want? I used to love McDonald's, right? You love McDonald's. McDonald's solved for one problem, right? To give us a burger. But you know what McDonald's turned around and did many years later? Is created what for the working parent? Let's see can anybody guess what McDonald's did to solve for the
Email?
Happy Meals, exactly, right? They solved for a problem, right? And then they solve for a problem in two ways for people that eat meat and people who don't eat meat, right? They came up with the chicken nugget one, right? If you really look at what's out there, if you really look at the industry, whether it's food, whether it's clothing, whether it's a service, every one of those businesses that are out there that are successful understood the value proposition in their canvas. I'm going to pause for a second because I want one of you to ask me a question. Roxy?
I feel like it's kind of like a controversial question or like a literature question, but like, how come the more successful businesses get, they care less about the customer service?
Who who said they like economics in here? Let me go back to the chat. Who was the person that said they liked economics?
It was me.
Rima, why do you think? Can you answer Roxy's question?
What did you say, Roxy? Why they don't care about customer service?
Don't
Like the
care.
larger a corporation gets, like I feel like it focuses less on the people and more on the money they can get.
Because I feel like they focus more on their revenue, how their revenue is getting cut by taxes, focusing more on their import exports, and I feel like they have little less time to focus on the customer service like insight.
Thank you.
That's exactly right. And I'm going to give you three words, right? Supply and demand. Our entire ecosystem is built on supply and demand. Over the past 5 years, I'm going to say 5 to 7 years, um, if you've heard your parents fuss about the cost of cereal, right? Or if you go to the store with your mom and dad, like I think I saw like cereal for like $10 a box when cereal used to be a couple of dollars at some point. But it's still there, right? I don't see supermarkets going out of business. I don't see McDonald's going out of business. I don't see gas stations going out of business. Jersey Gardens is always packed, right? People are walking around with shopping bags and the food court. There is no lacking in supply and demand. And unfortunately, Roxy and everyone else in this group, the big box retailers, people know like they can cut corners on their customer service and people will still buy from them. What I would say that's not a good mindset to have, right? Because as much as they try to cut corners, there is this one word that's called competition as well, right? And even in the best of a goods, a product or service, and we see it all the time, right? Like we all don't wear the same sneakers. We all don't wear the same clothes because you know why? Because if there's one out there, there's two. And how do you create something when you are thinking of becoming a CEO? And I look at each of you as future CEOs if you're not already. As you're thinking of becoming an entrepreneur, think about what do you want your product, good or service to look like? And how are you going to make it stand out? How do you compete against the product next to you? Because there's always a number one and a number two. But how do you make yours stand out? You can have the same price points. I look at it and say, but if your customer service sucks, I'm going to go spend my money over here. And you have free right and free will to spend your money where you choose. And every customer that you are, as Roxy said, spending that $1,000 on additional advertising, if you're not factoring in having top line customer service, quality products, eventually, it may not happen today or tomorrow, eventually those customers will start going over here to Evan's shop. Will start going over to some Summer's place, right? And then, Roxy is saying, but I spent $1,000 on advertising. Well, you know what? But your services started decreasing, right? Your customer service started getting less. Your hours are shorter. Every time someone wants to order something, it's always out of stock, or the color I want is never available. Like you're out of tune with your customer. And eventually that impacts your revenue, and eventually that impacts your bottom line. So solving for your VPC, understanding your value proposition. I'm big on customer service. I'm big on customer service. You know, time is money, time is valuable. We work hard. You know, your parents work hard. If you don't have a job already, you will have a job eventually. You know, like your those monies and those resources that when you go to the mall and spend, you know, they want every dollar. And as an entrepreneur, you want it also. And what are you giving for it is the answer to the question. I'm going to pause right there. Any questions? No? Now, I must be either very boring or you guys have had a long day or you're absorbing it all in. And I hope you're absorbing it all in and getting something out of it, because I am excited to share this with you. And hopefully, I've broken down the BMC and the VPC in a way for you guys to understand it as you're doing your homework. I want to give, before we take a break, I want to give you guys an example because I wanted to make sure all of this stuff out for you guys because I was so excited. Wanting to make sure that I gave you guys a real life example to get through your business model. And I wanted to touch on it from a clothing store perspective because it's not just about a t-shirt, right? It's not just about putting our name with our butterflies. I forgot the last piece of it that we talked about yesterday. It is how do you take that initial thought? How do you take that initial business and morph it into a bigger company, right? Because clothing, and when you're researching, when you're doing your guided research and wanting to help each of you, and I'll give you a personal story. I remember Miss Giordano in ninth grade in my business math class. And I knew at that point it would always be something with numbers. It would always be something with numbers for me. And my career path would take me from learning business math in high school to a role as a bookkeeper. And from there, wanting to be a CPA. And I remember as I was graduating undergrad, they changed the law that said, hey, instead of getting this 124 credits after I had just went through 4 years of college, you had to do 150 credits in order to sit for the CPA exam. And your girl was pissed because I'm like, I just did 4 years. Like, I don't want to do any more school. Um, and so I went on and did the extra credits and would get my master's degree. But in that time frame, my career path changed from no longer wanting to be a CPA to working in consumer product goods, CPG companies for M&M Mars. That would be my first corporate job, my first corporate career. And all of that and everything that's happened since then, whether it's owning, you know, a shoe store. At one point, I was like, I want to own a shoe store, you know, or I want to own a tax business. Um, you know, I want to do this. I want to do that. It was always about business. And then I would ultimately go back to school, still in numbers, still in numbers, still in numbers. I would go back to school, always focusing on my eighth grade, my ninth grade business math teacher, Miss Giordano, and all these years later, still remember her name because she had such a profound impact. And I didn't know exactly where it would go and where it would land, but I knew it would be something that I enjoyed, which is the numbers, which is what I want you all to think about, whether it's economics and letting it branch you off into something you love, whether it's math, whether it's history, whether you want to be a teacher, whether you want to be a scientist. There are so many things. And before we take a break, I want to give you guys a framework to think about this. And we're going to use the conversation from yesterday. And then I'm going to tell you what these 25 plus years of a career path has done for me. But I want you to think of it from a clothing brand. In full transparency, uh, I love rap music too, by the way, and I love Cardi B. So, because I'm going to give you guys an example here, right? So think of the clothing brand. And we talked about a t-shirt yesterday, right? So think about who your customers would be as we walk through Jersey Gardens Mall. Hopefully, everybody's been to Jersey Gardens, the Mills, as they call it, one way or another. Everybody can relate to what I'm saying here. And think about who you would be selling to, whether it's high school students, people from the neighborhood, athletes, gamers, church groups, who your clientele would be. And then you want to think about your value proposition. Who would want to buy from you? Ask yourself the question, who would want to buy from me? What do you represent when you are designing that t-shirt? Are you going to do it with an affirmation on it? Are you going to do it with a caricature on it? Are you going to do it with a design on it? Is it going to be affordable? Is it going to be high end? If you're walking through Jersey Gardens, as you know, you can buy a t-shirt for $5 or you can buy one for $80, right? It could be the same brand material, but because it has a brand name on it, it determines the price point, right? You're paying for the brand. Um, are you going to do custom drops, limited drops, supply and demand? If you only release 5 custom t-shirts, that's a hot t-shirt. Everybody's going to want it. You can charge a higher premium for it because you've only got 5 out in the streets and everybody wants them. Not being tied to a I'm doing what everybody else is doing, but creating your own brand and creating your own identity. When we talked earlier about if I gave each of you $1,000, what channels, what would you use it for under your BMC? Spend time thinking about that because that drives top line revenue and bottom line profit, right? We have so many social media channels today. It's not just in print. And print is newspapers, print is magazines, print is flyers that come to your home. You look at the virtual side of this, Instagram, TikTok, uh, excuse me, whatever the social medias are, whether you are selling to friends in school, friends, family, pop-up events. Pop-up events are huge today. If you guys know what pop-up events are, in order to start growing your brand and really looking at the price point and taking that and growing it from a perspective of, I started out today selling t-shirts. And what does that look like tomorrow? And I'm tying it all the way back into my ninth grade conversation with Miss Giordano that says you can start a t-shirt business today in a year from now, or 5 years from now, or 20 years from now, you can be a logo designer. You can be a freelance graphic designer. You can do stage production. You can do film production. You can do costume designs. You can do fashion runway. You can have a top store in the mall. You can do social media branding. You can do theater. You can do dance. You can do film. We have major production studios coming here to New Jersey now. Netflix is coming here to New Jersey. Lion Gates is here in New Jersey. All of them are looking for and will have a need for a designer. And starting a t-shirt business is something that would fit right into that mold. And I wanted to give you guys that look because for me personally, in ninth grade, when Miss Giordano taught that business class, and it was something that I loved, I would be able to go from M&M Mars and 10 years later working for Nestle, and then 10 years later running one of the top five largest school districts here in New Jersey, being the second in charge of of one of the largest school districts here, running a multi-million-dollar school district. I didn't know where it was going to take me in ninth grade, but I always wanted to make sure that I did something I enjoyed and something that would be my passion. I still have a small business off on the side, but I wanted each of you before we took this break to know and to really, really look at it and say, hey, this girl, I'm Jersey born. I'm from Passaic. I grew up in the projects of Passaic. My mom was a single mom for many years. You know, we look at our life, and we think about it and say, hey, what do I want to do? I am so happy that the S.O.A.R team, Professor JR, Miss Rosie, you know, offers this to you. I am so glad that each of you have taken this opportunity for yourself to say, hey, I want something out of this for me, because eventually you'll be graduating high school. Isaac talked about, like, I think you said, Isaac, your grandma sews, right?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Yep. I love to sew. Like, I made my clothes growing up. You know, you talking about costume design, you talking about stage design, you talking about film production. All of that goes into somebody leaving this class today saying, hey, Miss Regina talked about, designing t-shirts. Designing t-shirts is only for today. But what you do with that design of those t-shirts tomorrow, I'm going to leave that for you guys. And I really wanted to say that it's the bigger picture. It's the designing of it. It is something that each of you, as you're breaking down, and doing your research, if you're looking at your vision, looking at your BMC, looking at your value proposition, solve for a problem. Solve for a problem. Whether you want to get into music, whether you rap, whether your friends rap, whether you want to do local merchandising, whether you want to do concert merchandising. Like, people are always looking for branding. People always, are looking to identify themselves. Um, there's so many opportunities out there, and never just, you know, pigeonhole yourself into a box. Look at it and say, this is where I am today. But 1 year from now, 5 years from now, I'm going to do this, because you know what? Each of you can do that. And I'm going to pause right there. Professor JR, is it a 5 minute or a 10-minute break at 7:30?
For today, we'll do a 10 minute.
10-minute break. Any questions before we go on break? Evan was like, I'm out. Any questions? Okay. I'll see you guys back at 7:40. Thank you, Professor JR. So I just want to ask a question as everybody is loading back into the room for the ones that are here with cameras on. I gave you part of my personal story, but also something to think about. And I use the clothing t-shirt as the example, but wanted you guys to know that this wasn't really about the t-shirt. And hopefully you understood that that was a broader conversation. Yes? Yes? I'm trying to make sure I see everybody in the room. Like understanding that when you're thinking through this, when you're thinking about this program and being here, and you're thinking about your future career map, when you're looking at, writing out your business plan, or even doing the research on it, um, know that there are other opportunities that exist out there. And I was happy to be able to share that with you. Before we jump into mentors and your human force multipliers, are there any questions for me? Okay. I'm going to use this as I opened up the room, saying, please feel free, don't be shy to ask me questions. Think of me as your mentor as part of this. Think of me and Professor JR in the S.O.A.R team as mentors, and you guys are the mentees. Think of us as I'm not certain on what to do, and who can I bounce this off of? Who can I run this by? And when we think about the mentor, a seasoned professional who provides support, direction, and feedback to a less experienced person, the mentee. And the mentee, as I said about each and every one of you, are the proactive students who seek guidance and take ownership of their professional development. I'm going to add in there personal development also, because it's commendable that each of you are here, because you could be somewhere else, right? Each of you are here gaining valuable lessons, asking very targeted questions. Um, I like Rima's answer on the economic side, to be able to answer Roxy's question for her, like really exploring, being a mentee in a room, you know, you have an opportunity to ask any question that you want from the mentors that are here in front of you, including myself. You've had a few of us during this program. The one that I want to add to this, because I was taught this a few years ago, when I started my corporate career, was there is the mentee and the mentor relationship, but there's one I want you to write down and take with you, is something or someone called a sponsor, right? So there is also that person that is or will become your sponsor. And the difference between the mentor and the sponsor is the mentor, you can say, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. What do you think? And that person will sit with you. That person will brainstorm with you. That person will be able to support you, give you direction, give you feedback. But that's sponsor. And once I learned that, oh, there's a third component in this game, that sponsor will say, hey, and Isaac, I don't mean to jump pick on you tonight, but I'm going to use you as an example. That sponsor would say, hey, do you know Isaac? And I'm like, of course I know Isaac. I've seen his work. I've seen his designs. You would want to have him on your team. And that is the person that will vouch for you. That is the person that will know that the group and this cohort here on a Wednesday night that was in this source program, right? That's the person that will sponsor and say, you know what? They were on camera, they were attentive, they asked the hard questions. I would want to have them on my team. They are the ones that write reference letters for you. They are the ones that can stamp and vouch for you, whether it's your character. We're talking about t-shirt designs. That is the person you also want to have on your team who's going to sponsor you. And that was something that I learned early on in my corporate career that yes, I had a mentor. My mentor was the one that said, "Hey, Regina, you're tapped out in private sector, in corporate get into education, grow your businesses, and I was like, well, how am I going to do that? I like it over here. And they was like, no, you would have more value over here. Then I had to find that sponsor. And that sponsor was the one that says, you want Regina on your team. And that is something as write it down, lock it in, that you want that sponsor with you every step of the way. In your high school career, whether it's a teacher, a guidance counselor, when you are getting ready to go off to university, even if you are going to go into trades or an entrepreneur. I've seen their designs. I've seen their commitment. I know Rima makes a banging fruitcake, right? I know Roxy, when her team goes out there and do snow removal, like they are the best at it. Those are the people you want to be part of what you're doing. That is how you build your team. Building a board of advisors. I love the slide here. A board of advisor um, comes in layers as well. And it's identifying two people in your community or on LinkedIn that you want to learn from, right? Different from the sponsor that we talked about. Your sponsor is your secret weapon. Your sponsor is the person that picks up the phone and vouches for you. But when you're talking about your board of advisors, that's the person that keeps you honest, right? That is the person that keeps the checks and balances or the ebbs and flows of what you're doing, right. It is the person that you look to the left, you look to the right, and say, hey, am I doing this correctly? Industry expert, a technical coach. You know, I use my chat or my, as they call it, my AI mentor, my AI tool as my third brain because my AI has no emotions attached to it, right? And I use it as my third brain. Um, and each one of these people brings something to you. Industry expert. If you say, "Hey, Miss Regina, I'm thinking of, you know, wanting to do. I'm going to stay with the clothing design. I want to do clothing design. I'm thinking of going to FIT, Fashion Institute of Technology in New York. Um, Not sure what I need to do as a ninth, 10th, or 11th grader, even 12th grader at this point, but I want to do that. How do I get there? That industry expert will tell you this is what you need to research. This is what you need to do. You need to make sure that your courses are aligned to that today and move you towards that. Your technical coach, you can have somebody locally in the community that's into fashion, that's into design, that will look at it from a totally different lens and say, hey, you want to go to FIT? Let me show you how to do this because there is one way of doing it, but there is another way of doing it that still produces the same result. And then your AI mentor. You can key this into your AI platform and say, hey, I'm an 11th grader right now. Here's my GPA. These are the classes I've taken. What do I need to do to get me to become a stage production crew designer in the next 5 years? But I only want to go to FIT. And your AI mentor will give you a whole outline of what you would need to do starting today to get you to that point 5 years from now. And I would tell you, if you aren't using AI, which is part of our futures now, um, don't be afraid of it. Start playing around with it. There's a free version of Chat GPT. Um, Gemini, I love Gemini. I've been using it more and more frequently now. It's right on our phones. You can just ask it questions. It's very specific to the question you ask because it is a machine. So if you want specifics, I call them prompts. Again, I'm looking for X, Y, Z. You can't say, I just want to become a stage crew production. No, it's going to give you a broad answer. You want to say, I'm an 11th grader. I have this GPA. I want to go to this school. What is it going to take for me to get there in the next 5 years? You got to be very specific with the prompt. Any questions on Board of Advisor? No, no questions. Let me ask you guys a question then. So you guys have friends, family, network. Without giving specific names, if you had to pick, or you can write it down, two people, whether it's friends, family, community, can you identify two people that could be part of your board of advisor team that would be honest with you in your journey to become an entrepreneur? I'll leave it like that. Roxy?
For me, I work with the superintendent at my school. She's kind of like my mentor when it comes to like my guidance, kind of like emotionally, but also like on the college track. And I think that she's very like blunt, but she's also very creative, but she also is really realistic, and she'll like cut down a dream really quickly if it's not realistic, or if it's not achievable.
Okay. Anyone else?
Well, my dad is a business owner, so I feel like him being is like a business owner, he would like tell me the tweaks and the perks, and like just tell me his experience, and learning from his experience, I could see like what's there and like get more of like the insight.
Good, good, good. Anyone else? Yeah, start thinking about those two people. Start thinking about your board of advisors. Start thinking about those people, as Rima and Roxy said, that will give it to you straight. Not someone that's going to sugarcoat it, not someone that's going to yes you, not someone that's going to agree with everything that you're saying. You know, lay it out to them and say, hey, give me your honest opinion. Tell me where my gaps are. Give me feedback on it. Look at those people. And, as you're growing through this process, it's okay to replace one or both of those people so you can continue growing in your own, path. But I love having a board of advisor And it's not the board of advisor in our head, right? I have a 16-year-old over here who is a 10th grader, and I tell her, um, like the roommate in your head is not the person that I'm talking about, right? You need someone externally that you can bounce these ideas off of. Someone that's going to like listen to you. I love the superintendent. I love Rima. I think you said your dad, like really being able to have someone hear you and also give you instant feedback, positive feedback on, where you're going with this. Just being very, very intentional on it. So board of advisors is great, even if it's a close friend. Um, and making sure that it's not something where we're just, you know, sitting on social media chatting about it really, and the same thing for you guys being a board of advisor to someone else, and not sugarcoating it for them, being, well, oh, I think I want to do this now, it's whack and it's funny, and you're going to let them go off a cliff with it. That's not cool, right? That's not cool. Like, reciprocate, the honesty of the Board of Advisor, as we're doing it and as we're moving forward on it. Any questions on the Board of Advisors? Okay. 60-second snapshot elevator pitch. The infamous elevator pitch. Definition of an elevator pitch. I know there's a definition here. Can anybody tell me what they think an elevator pitch is?
It's and like it's used to it's like a short explanation to like tell people about you or like a program or business that you're in so that they can like know what it is about.
Exactly. Thank you, Summer. Anybody want to give me, and I know we have it on the screen here, anybody want to give me a quick elevator pitch? We're freestyling, as they say, right? Uh, and the definition of an elevator pitch is a brief, persuasive speech that you use to spark interest in your conversation, of what your organization does. It's part of a conversational piece. It's not being in an elevator riding up to the 10th floor and you say, oh man, there's like 5 people in here and somebody smells. That's not the elevator pitch, by the way, right? It's really talking about the business. It could be career day at school. It could be, whether you're doing a tour for university. It could be what you guys are going to do in a couple of more weeks about your presentation on your business. And how do you grab the hook? How do you grab the attention, provide the solution, and show proof? I am a designer of t-shirts. I do affirmations for self-care, self-love. And the proof is here. I've sold 30,000 t-shirts in the past 6 months. That was freestyling. I looked at the words. It answered the hook. It provided the solution for self-care. And the proof is based in the sales. Just like that. And as you start thinking more of a pitch, when you start thinking of everything we've talked about so far, and everything you guys have learned through this program, and thinking of your BMC, your value proposition, thinking about what you are selling, and thinking about that elevator pitch when you're standing in front of the audience, whether it's an audience of 1, 5, or 20. It's a representation of you. and being able to quickly in 60 seconds define who you are, what it is, what you do, the hook, the solution, the proof. Any questions?
Can you stay on the slide for a little bit? I'm writing it down. I'm sorry.
Oh, absolutely. Professor JR, do they get the presentations?
No, not the full presentations. There's references to everything in the Google class.
Got it.
Mm.
I'll leave it on there. Yeah, I think, and while Roxy is writing, I think it's important that, when we think about, and one of the things I didn't mention, when we think about clothing or when we think about entrepreneurial, becoming an entrepreneur is your brand and building your brand. Each one of you in this room, I like to say, is a brand, right? Each of you are building a brand. Each of you are going to start thinking about myself as a brand, my product, my good or service. And you are and will be known as the person behind that brand. How do you want to be represented? Very important. And when you're thinking about that pitch, when you are standing in front of the committee, standing in front of the S.O.A.R team, getting ready to pitch in graduation, think of yourself as this is me, this is my brand, this is how I want to be represented, and close the deal, right? Snapshot goal. It says you aren't trying to close the deal, you are trying to get a second meeting, but you're also trying to sell yourself, right? You're also trying to say, I am XYZ. I am building. I am growing. I would like to be able to meet with you in order to further discuss. So always look at it as I stand here in front of you. I want to present, but I also want to tell you who I am and why I think you should go with me. Any questions? Roxy, you good? Anybody else? Anybody else still writing? Okay, we're almost to the end. And thank you for all hanging in there with me. So closing and the roadmap of ahead. So we're talking about the mastery of the pitch, right? We're talking about building your brand. We're talking about identifying um, and being a brand of a CEO head, an entrepreneurial lens, or doing the research as you wrap up this program and say, you know what? I've learned some things. I didn't think about it that way. I thought, if I became an entrepreneur, I would be stuck in this box. And, Miss Regina gave me things. I can look into this. I can look into that. I can take my love for history and do this. I can take my love for math and do this. I can take my love for economics and do this. Excuse me. There are so many opportunities out there. I'm forever thankful to Miss Giordano in ninth grade. And you guys will always and also be thankful for either that one person, that one educator, that one leader that gave you guys an opportunity and you took the opportunity to be here tonight. Mastering that pitch. I do like recording yourself and giving yourself 60-second snapshots on your phone, whether it's on your phone, whether it's on Zoom. Um, to record yourself to see how it is. You can do it over and over and over again. Get comfortable with yourself speaking in front of the camera, speaking in front of people. Um, and the more you do it, the more comfortable you will be. I have this thing. Um, it doesn't happen often, but it still does. Like depending on the audience, depending on the room, even though I've practiced, even though I've rehearsed it, I call it that nervous jitter voice. And I can hear it. I'm a little more controlled with it today. But I've presented before. I've presented to big audiences. I've had to present a budget or share the bad news or share the good news. And you get that little crackling nervousness in your voice. And then you kind of, flush it out and you keep moving through it. What I would say for each of you is you will know when you're comfortable with it. Because if you talk about something that you love, when you talk about something that you enjoy, when you create a business that you enjoy and do it for fun, have fun at it. Have fun at it. I can't stress that enough. Do something that you're going to enjoy. Evan, don't call me and say, well, I decided to uh, I saw a True Religion store. I opened up a True Religion shop in the mall. We sell nothing but jeans. But you're a sweatsuit sneaker guy. Don't do that to yourself. Like do something that you love, right? Break it down, each of you, think about it, write it down, and go back to those 7 levels and ask yourself why 7 times. Why are you doing this, Roxy? Why are you doing this, Rima? Why are you doing this, E. Stephanie? I like the name. My sister's name is Stephanie. Ask yourself why. Kimberly, ask yourself why. Why are you guys? Oh, there's a Stephanie and an E. Stephanie. I love it. Ask yourself why you are doing this and ask yourself why again and record yourself and play it back to yourself. Know and get to the core of it. Ivy, peel it back like an onion. I always use, oh, she's like, oh, she called my name. Yep, I called your name too. Like, you know, peel it back like an onion. There's multiple layers of an onion, right? And if you've ever chopped an onion for your parents and you start tearing, right? You got to keep peeling it back. You got to keep peeling it back. Get to the core of the why. That's what this program is for, getting to the core of the why. And if you can't get down to that seventh why, start all over again and ask yourself again, like, what am I doing this for? Because if you're doing it and the top why is money, and the second why is money, and the third why is money, and the fourth why is money, as my daughter would say, Ma, don't play yourself, right? Don't do that, right? Don't do that. The money will come. I guarantee you the money will come. The things that you enjoy will be much happier, will be so much enjoyable. And I'm sorry, that profit will grow from, we talked about 80,000 yesterday. It will go from a net profit of 80,000 to adding another zero and another zero. And it's all obtainable for each of you. Um, Professor JR, I think that is
In the road.
end
All
of the
right.
road. Do you guys have any questions? I'm your mentor right now. I am here to answer any questions. I enjoyed this. I'm gonna stop sharing for a second so I can see all of you. I enjoyed being here with you all. It was important for me to let you guys know I was once where you guys were. I seized those opportunities, and I am a lifelong learner. Like anytime there's an opportunity for me to learn something, I grab it. And I appreciate each of you for taking time to be here with the S.O.A.R team, to be here and looking at it from a holistic perspective on changing or redirecting the trajectory of your life. You won't regret it at the end of the day.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Miss Regina. All right, y'all. Give it up for Miss Regina. I think she did a great job taking you guys through applications of business and applications of entrepreneurship. At this point, I have two things on the agenda to follow up on. One, I really want to make sure everyone is comfortable with the end of course, right? So what's due next week, Thursday, and then we'll do the Mentimeter. So we talked a little bit about the guided research yesterday. For those that are doing the business um plan, is everyone clear on that, right? What they're doing, the elevator pitch. Anyone have any questions about the elevator pitch? Think we're okay. All right. So outside of the elevator pitch, you will be completing just your a draft of these things. So we just ask that you do a draft of the business model canvas and the value proposition canvas. So you have some practice doing it. I did put a link in the chat earlier that was like it walks you through step by step exactly how to fill out the business model canvas. So that way you have some practice. And then I'll say to be ready for your pitch, there's two things at minimum I think you're going to need, not just the two. So, one, what is your business, right, that you want to pitch on, right? This could be something from last week where you identified a friction point, or this could be a passion. Um, you will need to have your vision statement and your mission statement, right? So you definitely want to have that because that wraps into your pitch, right? So if you look at the document that was emailed that outlines the end of course, you'll see for option B, the business plan framework, you include your vision statement, where your company wants to become in the future, right? And you talk about where you want to go. You include the mission, right? So you want to tie these things into your elevator pitch. Any questions on that? And I'll drop the doc in here just so you guys have it again, the Google Doc in here. All right. So on Tuesday next week, so we shifted the classes from there's no class tomorrow, right? So instead of three classes this week, it'll be three next week. So next week it'll be Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Tuesday will be the class where you go over pitching, right? So it'll be a class where everyone needs to come off mute. You're gonna be practicing how to pitch. So you get time for that. It's taught by Miss Kiana. Wednesday will be a practice day. So by Wednesday, you really want to have all of your drafts together in terms of your elevator pitch or your guided research project, and we'll do some test runs so that on Thursday will be the real thing, right? Thursday will be when we time you, you do your presentation, and that will be the end of the fundamentals cohort. And if you check your email, you should have the calendar to see when the next one starts, but I could pull it up here real quick. But again, just want to make sure if anyone has any questions, we could talk about it. We've got a little bit of extra time tonight. Um, Hospitality and travel will start the week after, Tuesday, March 10th. Um, all right. All right. So before the Mentimeter, any questions? You guys are good? Thumbs up. Just saying you had a question? And then Roxy.
For the business thing, is it based off like what we did like last week in our community, or can it be like something we want to do in the future?
It could be something you want to do in the future. So if there's something you're a bit more passionate about, tuned into, just do your vision and your mission statement around that, and you know, you could focus on that. And then you will continue that throughout advanced. So whatever you start now, you'll build on it when we do the advanced a cohort later.
I have a question.
Mhm.
So for the elevator pitch, are we doing the vision statement and the mission statement within those 60 to 90 seconds, or is that just in addition?
Oh, so I was saying like having the vision and mission statement mapped out ahead of time, you can use it as needed. So like doing an elevator pitch, you're usually introducing yourself and your business idea, right? So sometimes when you introduce your business idea, you might say, "Hey, my business is called, JR's Sneaker Shop. I always had a vision to get sneakers for everybody because I love them." Just throwing it out there. So like in that sense, you might throw it in there, but it's not like a hard mandatory like you have to say your vision in here. But sometimes it helps to include it.
Thank you.
No problem. So for guided research, so I'll say this week, guys, definitely lock in on what you want to do. Spend a little time tomorrow evening. Since we shifted the time, you could spend some time just doing your notes, just doing some outlines. Like, all right, what are you researching? What are you talking about? For the guided research, the guideline there was not too stringent, right? Double checking here. 3 paragraph minimum, 5 sentences each. Think you guys could do that in your sleep. You choose an industry, organization, or college for the guided research. You're going to share facts that you learned, details you found interesting, 2 to 3 takeaways, and a conclusion. Um, and then you're going to do an elevator pitch, kind of summarizing your crucial points. So just to make it clear, for the guided research paper, your paper is going to have that first part, right? Like introduction and the facts of what you learned, specific details you found interesting, 2 to 3 takeaways, and a conclusion. So that's going to be the paper. Your pitch is going to be summarizing the crucial points, right? So it's like in 90 seconds, how would you summarize what you researched? All right. So everyone's doing one pitch or the other. And then whichever one you choose, that's the track you're going to stay on for the advanced cohort. So if you start with the guided research and you do the paper and the pitch on the research, in advanced, you're going to do a 5 minute presentation. So basically, you're going to flesh out your research even more. If you do the business plan, then in advance, you're going to do a full on business presentation. Make sense?
The outline for the guided research posted somewhere.
Yeah, it's in the chat. The last link, the Google Docs link. So in the document, it's option A, guided research paper plus pitch. All right. All right, so I will get going on the Mentimeter link. All right, Mentimeter is in the chat. You guys can go ahead and click the link. Get it going. And I'll share for the recording, but I think you guys will see the screen anyway. But all right, kicking things off here. What is unit economics? It's from yesterday's class. Make Miss Regina proud. Yes, it is that one. It seemed like we didn't get all the answers in time. It is time, so you gotta jump in there. What does CAC stand for? So some might say CAC. You got 10 seconds, 5 seconds. All right. Batting 100 right now. All right, all right. For a business to be healthy, which must be higher? LTV or CAC? This is a tight one. All right. Yeah, that was a tight one. I'll give y'all that. Lifetime value of a customer needs to be higher.
Right.
But did we miss somebody? This is 11 now. How do you calculate contribution margin? How do you calculate that? What is your contribution margin made up of? Oh, we got a typo here, so we know it's not option three. Yes, price minus cost of goods sold is your leaves your margin. True or false? As a CEO, your time is free because you own the company. Definitely false. I'm glad everyone knew the CEO is the last person that has time. Now, a retired CEO is different. If your contribution margin is negative, what should you do? Hire more people, lower your price, raise your price, lower your cost, ignore it, hope for the best. Raise your price. You gotta raise your price. You need more money on that. All right, almost there. 7 of 11. What is the purpose of the 7 levels deep exercise? Why are we asking y'all so many questions? To find 7 different products, to find a why strong enough to survive hard days, to hire 7 employees, to rank your competitors. All right, we're on it.
Woo-hoo.
What are the 3 parts of a 60-second snapshot or the pitch or elevator pitch? What are the 3 parts? Nice, nice. We got it. And we got it. Right. Almost at the end. True or false? Rejection from a mentor or customer is a personal failure. Should you take it personal? False, false. Yeah, that's not a personal failure. They missing out.
Exactly. They are missing out.
How should you treat AI like Gemini or ChatGPT in your business? Person who does all the thinking, an intern, a replacement for a human, as something to avoid. Okay. Little bit of a spread here. We don't want that AI to be the do all the thinking. We want it to be a thought partner. Some would liken it to an intern who does the grunt work. You're overseeing the work that it's doing. You're saying, go process those 20 documents and let me know when you're done. Last one. In a pitch, the proof section should ideally mention your favorite color, office location, unit economics, or why you're the right person, your social media follower count. Oh, y'all are quick. There we go. Batting 100 on the last one. Awesome job, everybody. Let's see who was the quickest and the one that had the most correct answers. Roxy. Congratulations, Roxy. That's funny. I guess someone didn't have a name, so Android was technically the fastest, but all right, cool. Thank you, everybody. So, all right. So let me close out of that and then I'll drop the tonight's survey in the chat. That will wrap it up. Let's see. Oop, here is the survey for tonight is in the chat. Once you complete that, drop a C in the chat for see you later. And remember, next week is wraps up fundamentals cohort. Thursday will be the end of class presentations. Tuesday is actually a really fun course. You guys get to Miss Kiana will be leading that one, and it's called Pitch Perfect. So really come prepared to engage and go through some rounds of practicing your pitch. But she makes it really fun. So Tuesday should be a very fun evening, and then Wednesday practice time. Thursday pitch time. So if you've completed the survey, you are free to go. Have a good night. Have a good weekend.
Good night, everyone. Good night, Professor.
Good night. Thank you. Thank you, Miss Regina.
Yep, absolutely.
All right, just saying you all good, or do you have a little more to do?